What is Lira da braccio? A further or last step in the development of late medieval fiddle, viol, or in Italy viola, in this case the already existing instrument which simply got the new name, new role and playing technique in chords? Or was it completely new invented instrument, something which happened often in this period, or a missing link between medieval viol and early or Renaissance violin? There was a gradual organological transformation of the medieval bow instrument viola into the Lira da braccio. Judging by numerous iconographic representations of that time, this transformation was not only relatively slow, but the two instruments in various intermediary phases coexisted and were used in parallel for some time, probably even by same musicians. French musician and musicologist Philippe Canguien thinks that the problem of lira is not when it actually appeared, but much more when and by whom was decided to call it with the name lira in Italian and lyra in Latin. And he thinks that the man who gave the new name to an already existing instrument viola and also gave the name to the whole new practice ad lira canere, singing to the lira, was a great Neoplatonist Marsilio Ficino. Lira had a great importance in his philosophic works, but he was also a distinguished performer known for his poetic rage, or furor poeticus. Sure is that Lira da braccio played great role in the practical performance of a one-man band, poet, singer, lira player, and as a symbol of revival of the antiquity, which, as we know, at the end led to the birth of completely new poetical, musical, and theatrical forms of recitative, monody, opera, and oratorio. We do not know exactly when the first professional musicians appeared in the Middle Ages, but by the 11th or 12th century at the latest. In the majority of cases, the musical performances were improvised, and only thanks to some fortuitous circumstances, a small part of what they performed daily was recorded in a few manuscripts with vocal or instrumental music. From the time of the troubadours onwards, there was no longer a significant difference between recitation, declamation, and singing poetry with almost invariably one's own accompaniment on some stringed, usually bowed instrument. Of particular interest to us is the strong tradition of canterini and cantastorie performances in the Florentine square of San Martino, because throughout the 14th and 15th centuries, many of those events took place there. Some of canterini not only gained enormous popularity and admiration from the public, earned a kind of fortune, but also around the last quarter of the 15th century served as a kind of bridge to the humanist art of cantare ad lyram, singing with the accompaniment of the Lira da braccio. If we accept the hypothesis that it was precisely Marsilio Ficino who gave the new name Lira a new function to the already existing bowed vihuola, given his enormous reputation, connections, and the support of the ruling Medici family, this idea was very quickly embraced by the Florentine cultural and humanistic circles, and later the same concept began to be very successfully exported throughout Italy. This went hand in hand with the export of Florentine cantori ad lyram, who at the end of the 15th and in the first third of the 16th century absolutely dominated the scene and performed all'improvviso at most Italian courts and city-states. The apotheosis of improvised art cantare ad lyram also leads to an increasingly rift between humanistic exclusivity and the tradition of regular canterini. They continue to perform in city squares, but increasingly, except for honorable exceptions, were reduced to ordinary cantimbanchi, charlatans, ciurmadori, who, in a way unintentionally, return to the histrionic, juggler, and cantastorie origins. However, they remain in the domain of improvisation, and this practice in some parts of Italy lived on until the middle of the 20th century. Lira Iconography, in his epochal work on Lira da braccio from 1995, Sterling Scott Jones made an excellent and very detailed iconographic analysis of 100 examples from last third of the 15th to the first third of the 17th century. I decided to take over his ideas and organization and continued finding another 200 examples. What could be said after Jones and mine analysis? First and most superficial clue would be that the number of over 300 depictions support the opinion that Lira da braccio was one of the most important and in various works and techniques of art most often represented musical instrument in general and bowed instruments in particular. Due to its signification as a symbol of mythological or historical person of Apollo, Arion, Orpheus, Phoebus, Homer, King David, etc., and the real instrument played by canterini, cantastorie, humanist cantori ad lyram, many artists and musicians, we could suppose that Lira da braccio has been also played relatively often and on various levels of social life. As we could see, due to the groundbreaking iconographic analysis by Sterling Scott Jones, there is a lot of information about Lira da braccio construction, playing technique, symbolic and significance in its best days we could learn from iconography. This could be also useful to various interested specialists, as for instance the historian of art, musicologist, maker of instruments, and of course for ever growing one's extremely small Lira community, people who already play or want to learn how to play this instrument. What is really striking is the abundance of iconographic representation depicting Lira da braccio, played or not, together with 1 to 10 other instruments. Even if many of those items have clear or hidden symbolic signification, in some cases it could be possible that they represent a realistic act of performance. Various types or body shapes of lyre. Sterling Jones divided his Lira Iconography in 5 main types or shapes of lyre. A. Lyra with 4 corners like violin. B. Lyra with 2 corners. C. Lyra with no corners. D. Instruments that cannot be identified. And E. Lyra with oval body. We could expect that the examples of A-type lyra would belong mostly to a later period, but this shape shows the widest spread within the time span of the Lira da braccio, extending from the end of the 15th to the beginning of the 17th century. The B-type instrument shapes with 2 corners appears mostly within the first third of the 16th century and are seen most often in religious paintings. Type C, no corners, medieval fiddle, viola or guitar form. Instruments of this shape appear in the iconography at the end of the 15th century and continue to appear through the first third of the 16th century. Type E, lyra with oval body, a shape sometimes found on medieval fiddles as well. Jones documented with 1 example only, and therefore it could be taken only as an isolated case. Holding of the instrument and a bow. Concerning the holding of the lyra, sometimes players hold the lyra somewhere between shoulder, neck and chest, mostly in vertical slant position. I decided to consider only the 3 basic positions: on the shoulder, on the chest and on the neck. To that, I took over from Jones the positions across the chest and in the lap or viol-like. Bow and its holding. In both iconographies, Jones and mine, the majority of depictions, lyra being played or not, represent the bows with frog or handle. Are the frogs fixed or movable is not possible to deduce. The holding of the bow, when represented correctly, is similar to bow holding of baroque, violin or viola, more from the air, resulting in lighter pressure. The initials A for the type of the lyra is followed by initials SJ for Sterling Jones and IP for my Lira Iconography. We see first the way of holding on the shoulder. It is always the example for A-type lyra, followed by B and C-type. There are some very known examples, particularly this last one by Raphael Parnassus, where instrument has 9 strings, which was explained by specialists with presence of 9 muses. Could be. And then C. For that one, I want to thank dear Giordano for finding it. And then we go to the next way of holding, on the chest. First A, B-type and the C. The next way of holding is under the chin, represented with only 1 example by Tintoretto. And then we go to the holding across the chest. It is important to notice that only the holding like the first one in the sitting position would allow playing of the longer bowing, which would be ideal for performing of the singing with one's own accompaniment. In other cases, under the elbow or in the elbows standing, you can make only shorter bowings, which would be suitable for instrumental music or dances. Some more examples of this type. And the last way of holding, represented with only 2 examples of the Lira Iconography, but very known by Gaudenzio Ferrari, where you see an absolutely normal Lira da braccio with 7 strings without strings, because he never paints the strings, but of course we have pegs, 7 pegs, but instrument held as the viol.